Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. May 9th, 2018.
The Cooner Report is powered by Kelly Financial Services. Cleaning up your financial bull. Get the peace of mind that you deserve at Kelly Financial Services.
104 here on the great WRKO, the voice of Boston, Jeff Cooner, Boston's bulldozer. Okay, joining me now is a man who obviously needs no introduction. He is one of the leading conservative minds and thinkers, really, of the last 50 years. You know him, you love him. Nationally syndicated columnist, best-selling author, Patrick J. Buchanan. Pat, thank you so much for coming on the Cooner Report.
Delighted, Jeff. Delighted to be here.
Pat, I've got to ask you straight out of the box. Your last column was, don't trash the Iran nuclear deal. President Trump essentially has just trashed the nuclear deal. What's your reaction? What's your response?
I think it's a terrible mistake on the part of the president pulling out of this right now. Following that, of course, they've called for canceling the deal whereby we sold $40 billion worth of Airbus planes and Boeing planes to Iran. I don't know where we're headed, Jeff, other than down the road to where the president makes demands on Iran to which it says no, and new demands. And I think at the end of that road, there's a real possibility of a war which Donald Trump said he would not get America into.
Okay, now, Pat, that's to me the central question. Why do you think by pulling out of this deal, I don't want to say guarantees, but significantly increases the chances of us going to war with Iran? Why do you see that happening?
I see it for this reason. The president's pulled out of the deal. I think Iran is going to stick with the deal by and large, especially if the Europeans don't impose sanctions, but the Americans may force them to deal with it. But I think this, in terms of the war, I think Israel wants a war with Iran in Syria to drive the Iranians out of Syria. The Saudis would like to see the United States fight Iran. And I think what we're going to get is Israeli action against Iranian elements in Syria. We saw that just yesterday. And I think what happens when the shooting starts back and forth and the Iranians respond after being provoked, we're going to have an increase in violence in Syria between Iranians and Israelis. And I think the United States almost inevitably will be sucked into that on the side of Israel. I don't know how you solve this problem currently going on in Syria without basically a stand down of all the forces that are there.
Pat, but just to play devil's advocate for a second, I'm sure you've heard these arguments, but I just want to see what your response is. If we did stay in the Iran deal, the proxy war, the shadow war, whatever you want to call it, between Iran and Israel in Syria would still continue. There would still be missile strikes, right, on Iranian positions or Iranian bases. So if the proxy war continues, even if we're in the deal, if that leads to a war between Iran and Israel, we would get sucked in anyway. What do you say to that argument?
I would say to that argument this. President Trump said he was going to get us out of Syria. I would tell the Israelis point blank, obviously if you are attacked by Iranian troops in Syria, we're with you. But you are not going to be able to start a war that drags the United States into a brand new war in Syria. We are not going in. To me, the Iranian nuclear deal is a good deal in this sense. Iran doesn't have a bomb. It hasn't been working on a bomb since 2003. It's got all its centrifuges. The number of those has been reduced. Its uranium's out of the country. It is something on which to build. I think the way we were going, which is basically under the late Obama administration of engaging with Iran and trying to work with them diplomatically, was the way to go. Of all the things that could happen there, I think a real disaster would be the United States being sucked into that Syrian civil war against Iranian forces, and then maybe against Syrian forces, and then maybe Hezbollah acting up against Israel. I don't know what the Russians would do. I know they don't want a war with the United States, but I think Trump's instincts to get us out of Syria are dead right.
Pat, what do you say to the argument that the deal gave the mullahs over $100 billion in unfrozen assets, $2 billion almost in cash? It does nothing on their ballistic missile program. It does nothing about their funding of terrorists across the Middle East. And then you have Bibi Netanyahu with his presentation saying that he says he's got evidence through Mossad that the Iranians continue to have a clandestine nuclear weapons program and that they've played us for fools. What do you say to those arguments?
If the Iranians have a clandestine nuclear weapons program right now, an active program, then all the U.S. intelligence agencies ought to be called to account and their leaders fired, because they have told us in 2007 and in 2011 Iran has no active nuclear bomb program. It does not have a bomb program. That's one thing. What were the other questions you asked on the $100 billion? That money is gone. As for the missile operation, as for restrictions on Iranian missiles, I think that's worth negotiating with the Europeans and with others to say, look, if you have no nuclear weapons, there's no need for an intermediate-range ballistic missile that can go 2,500 miles or a long-range ballistic missile that can hit the United States. If you start building one of those and it's not conspicuously to put satellites into orbit, and the nose cone looks like it's for a nuclear weapon, we will destroy those missiles. We'll be happy to negotiate a deal with you. But I don't see what you accomplish at all by taking off Iran the restrictions that have been imposed upon Iran, in which they have scrupulously met, according to every inspector, according to the Europeans, IAEA, and all the rest. Why would you risk that? You've got something with the Iranian deal. The money is gone. We're not going to get it back. It wasn't our money. And frankly, $40 billion apparently was going to be spent on commercial airliners. We could have gotten that $40 billion back.
Pat, when Bibi made that presentation, what do you make of his presentation? Was he trying to convince the United States to come in on behalf of Israel against Iran?
I think it was orchestrated.
Okay, now why do you think that?
Well, because I think Pompeo was there. There was strikes about that time. It was. Why did Bibi get up and do it all at night in Israel in English? Why didn't he use Hebrew if it's with his own people?
So you're saying that his audience was obviously the American audience,
right,
not the Israeli audience.
Run almost.
All right, so Pat, then I've got to ask you then this ultimate question. Do you think Trump's strategy, and he's a deal maker, he's a negotiator, is to pull out of the deal because ultimately he wants to renegotiate a better deal? One would say no sunset provisions, ones that puts ballistic missiles on the table in terms of a negotiation. Is that his strategy, to maybe pull out, have the Europeans act as a conduit, and then come back and say, look, you guys don't want nuclear weapons? Fine, let's get a new deal. Is that possibly his thinking?
The Iranians say, look, we trusted you. We did exactly what you said here. We would be willing to talk about a follow-on deal. But the idea that you walk away from the deal and you renege on what you promised, the answer is no, we don't want to negotiate a new deal with you. So what do we do then? What is the alternative then? Issue an ultimatum and go to war?
What if Trump just status quo? In other words, we've pulled out.
Well, then how has he said to me, in other words, we give up a nuclear deal which restricts their production of uranium and their centrifuges. All of these restrictions go off because we walked away from the deal, and then we do nothing? I mean, that means that Iran could be much closer to a nuclear weapon than they were under the deal. If there's no follow-on deal, and Iran walks out of this and starts re-enriching uranium, and this time not to 20%, but to 90% weapons grade, what do we do then?
Pat, so I don't want to put you now in the role of a prophet. You're obviously a commentator, you're an analyst, you're an historian.
Let's go with the prophet.
But let's go. What do you think the likelihood is? What is the percentage of us going to war with Iran after this decision, in your view?
Look, the neocons, Bolton, Bibi Netanyahu, the Saudis, all the others, they see Iran rising in the Middle East, and they want it dealt with, and they want it dealt with militarily, and they know they may not be able to do it all by themselves, so they want to conscript the United States of America to come and do it for them. And what do I think is, I think what Bibi's going to do, he's going to keep provoking the Iranians in Syria with bombing attacks, killing them, until they respond. And when they respond, you're going to get a great cry from the Beltway here and the neocons and the War Party and everyone. We've got to go to the defense of our Israeli allies. And then we're going to be in another new Middle East war, a much larger war than before, much more damaging to the world economy because you have real problems in the Persian Gulf and with oil. And I think eventually that puts at real risk a presidency that I supported. I think it's just a terrible, terrible mistake.
Pat, you wrote in your last column that America's strategic challenge, as you put it, is not Russia, it's not Iran, it's not even North Korea. If there is any country, it is China. Do you think if we go to war, God forbid, we go to war in the Middle East against Iran, that this will so bleed and bankrupt America that the ultimate winner will be China?
Well, I think certainly. Who's the ultimate winner from 18 years of Middle East wars in Afghanistan and in Iraq and in Libya and in Yemen and in Syria? All the bloodshed, all the diversion, all the cost of these trillion-dollar wars, the forever wars. We're going to continue this. What has China done? China has gone from being a country smaller than Italy at the beginning of this century to a strategic power and an economic power to rival the United States. I think what China will do is, if you ostracize Iran, they will reach out to the Iranians and try to establish stronger relations with them. I think they will stay out of any conflict if we get into the Middle East. And while we're settling and putting the Middle East together and recreating Vermonts and Iowas out there in the Middle East, I think they will be growing, strengthening. If you wanted to bet, given the way we're headed, if you wanted to bet on one country who's going to be dominate the century by the mid-century, I think it would be China.
Pat, you've been very gracious with your time, and I know we're up against it, but I do want to ask you one final question, and it's not about Iran. You wrote an absolutely, really a brilliant column. I think maybe the best column on the topic so far. And that was your column on, I think it came out on Friday, about Robert Mueller. And your advice to the president is, and you're a big supporter of the president, is defy any subpoena. If Mueller wants to force you, compel you to testify, basically tell him, go fly a kite. Why?
Well, this is very simple. The special prosecutor cannot indict a sitting president of the United States. And if he declares the president a target, he can't. Then Trump would not have to answer a subpoena. But he's the president of the United States. He's the leader. What he should say, no, I'm not going to sit down and talk with you at all. I'm not going to follow your subpoena. The special prosecutor will go up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court may say he has to do it. I would say, if Trump, I would say, I don't care. That's the third branch of government. They cannot tell the President of the United States to have to force him to testify before a member of the executive branch of the United States, which I control. Secondly, if I'm a target of the special prosecutor, I could just say, I'm not going over and testify against myself. And then what is Mueller going to do? What you tell Mueller is, go ahead, I'm not going to testify, wrap up your investigation. If you got something on me that's justified my removal, it's got to be sent to the House of Representatives, which is the only institution that can indict me, and the Senate's the only one that can convict and remove me, so impeach and be damned.
And Pat, as you lay out in your column, you're right. The only institution that could prosecute the president is Congress.
Right.
And you're saying,
do you want Congress? Congress can subpoena documents too. I won't give them. They can impeach me. There's no doubt about that. That's the Constitution. I will follow that.
And Pat, and I think it was a brilliant argument. Take it from the legal terrain, as you put it, or the legal ground, to the political terrain, where Trump is much stronger. And then if you do have an impeachment fight in Congress, and I think you're dead on about this, you're not just going to hear about the Russia narrative and Russiagate, you're going to hear about that FBI cabal. You're going to hear about how they tried to bring down Trump and essentially overturn the election. And Pat, I want to read this one final paragraph. I thought it was so powerful. And speaking of being a prophet, I think it's a warning. I think it's a fire bell in the night. Quote, basically, you're daring them. You want to impeach him? Go ahead. We'll fight it out in Congress. The whole country, the whole world will be looking. And here's what you say. Trump is a nationalist who puts America first, both in trade and securing her frontiers against an historic invasion from the South. If he is overthrown, and the agenda for which America voted is trashed as well, it may be middle America in the streets this time. Pat, are you saying that if they go for impeachment and try to overthrow this president, a duly elected president, you may actually see his supporters this time go out on the streets and massive civil unrest?
I think there's a real possibility. You heard that judge down there in Virginia. He said, what are you doing with this Manafort stuff going back to 2005 or 2010? This is clearly designed to flip him and to get him to testify against the President of the United States and basically to remove the President from office and impeach him. In other words, this is a political machine and they're using legal methodology. If you can move it out of the realm of the legal, which I've described, by defying these subpoenas and say, go ahead, once you put it into the House of Representatives, then the Republicans can call their witnesses. They can call and inquire of Comey. Why did he let Hillary go? They can call in McCabe and all the rest of them. They can bring up the British spy and what he did. Who were the Russians you talked to? All the rest of this stuff, and show that this is okay. You can accuse Trump of allegedly being in collusion with the Russians. A, you got to prove that, and B, we're going to prove the case that you all have been colluding to overthrow an elected president of the United States. So both sides represent your cases before the House, and let the American people decide. And if you impeach me, send it over to the Senate for trial. But just tell them, look, we're ready. We're ready to go out in the street on this thing, and that's what he ought to do. And I do think this. I do think, in a way, there's an indispensable quality to Trump, as he's the only figure who has really stood up against the invasion of America from the South and done something to stop it. He's the only one that's tried to halt these trade deals and trade policies that have cost us all these industries and jobs and investment and factories. And I had hoped, and this is one reason I'm so concerned about this Iranian thing, I had hoped he would be the president to disengage us from these wars that have bled and bankrupted us. And I fear that he's getting himself into another one. I'm hard for me to see, Jeff, how you avoid some kind of collision when there are people in the Middle East and in this country who want that war.
Pat, I urge everybody, go to Buchanan.org. I go there. I read every column of his religiously. He's my favorite columnist, has been for, I think, 30 years now, Pat. Pat, dynamite stuff. Also, he's got a book out. We had him on about it, but I urge you, if you haven't bought it, please buy it. Nixon's White House Wars. It's an absolute gem. Pat, thank you so much, my friend, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
God bless you. Take care. Okay, Patrick J. Buchanan, you've heard him. He thinks pulling out of the Iran deal is a huge mistake, a strategic blunder. What do you think of Pat's analysis? What do you think of his argument? And, to me, the brilliant column that he wrote, basically throw down the gauntlet to Mueller. You want to subpoena me? Go fly a kite. You want to go to the courts? Go fly a kite. I am not going to sit down. I am not going to answer your questions. You want to impeach me? Let's take it to Congress, from the legal arena to the political arena. And then we can fight it out. And Pat's warning, if Trump is impeached or overthrown, will middle Americans take to the streets? 617-266-6868. Your calls next.
I don't know where we're headed, Jeff, other than down the road to where the president makes demands on Iran, to which it says no, and new demands. And I think at the end of that road, there's a real possibility of a war, which Donald Trump said he would not get America into.
That, of course, was columnist, best-selling author, really one of the giants of the conservative movement, Pat Buchanan. We had him on for at least, 15 minutes? He rarely gives 15 minutes to anybody. But anyway, it was a sizzling interview, agree or disagree. And I want to ask you then, because it's elicited tremendous reaction. It's the Kelly Financial Services poll question of the day. On the Iran nuclear deal, who do you agree with? Donald Trump or Pat Buchanan? If you agree with Trump, A, yes. In other words, A, forgive me, Trump, A, Buchanan, B. You can vote on my Twitter page at The Kuhner Report, Kuhner, or go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. So who do you agree with? A, Trump, B, Buchanan. Again, you can vote on my Twitter page at The Kuhner Report, Kuhner, or go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. My friends, we're going to take your votes. I want to take your calls. 617-266-6868. But first, a quick news break. President Trump is now directly warning Iran not to restart its nuclear program. Evan Heidenrich is in the WRKO newsroom. Evan, what did the president say?
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
137 here on the great WRKO. Okay, my friends, join Relay for Life and help the American Cancer Society fund cancer research, free rides to chemo, and free places to stay near hospitals. Register or donate today at relayforlife.org. Okay, it's the Kelly Financial poll question of the day, and I want to ask you, who do you agree with? We just had Pat Buchanan on. Donald Trump, A, Pat Buchanan, B. You can vote on my Twitter page at The Kuhner Report, Kuhner, or you can go to WRKO.com/Kuhner. You know what else? I'm going to also open it up for the text page as well, because we're getting such a big reaction out of this. So just go WRKO, so we know it's, for us, and then either go A for Trump or B for Buchanan to 70470. 7470. Buchanan believes Trump should never have pulled out of the Iran deal. Trump obviously pulled out of the Iran deal. Let me just throw one more quick log on the fire, and then I want to get back to the blazing phone lines. The second half of the interview, we touched on his previous column, which I think is one of the most brilliant written on the topic so far, which is that Buchanan is urging Trump to essentially defy Mueller's threat of a subpoena. As you know, Mueller is threatening that if Trump will not comply, he will go to court or a grand jury and force him, compel him to testify against the president's will. What Buchanan is now urging, and I think he's dead on about this, is that take it from the legal terrain into the political arena. Defy the subpoena. What's Mueller going to do? Go to the Supreme Court? Fine. Let's say even wins at the Supreme Court. All Trump has to say is, no one has the legal constitutional right to prosecute me or issue a subpoena against me unless it's Congress. So, Mueller, you've been investigating this now for a year. For 2 years, the FBI has been looking into Russiagate and Russia collusion. Wrap it up. Show me what you got. If you think there's grounds for impeachment, let's bring it on. And then take it from the legal arena straight to the political arena and basically tell the Democrats, you want to impeach me? Go ahead, impeach me. Impeach. You impeach me in the House, and then you have to try me in the Senate. And as Pat rightly points out, because only Congress can prosecute or impeach or remove a president, then the president will be able to rally his forces. And yes, the American people will hear the bogus case about, him colluding with Putin and helping them interfere in our election, yada, yada. But they'll also hear the other narrative. The true narrative, the narrative the media doesn't want the American people to know, how an FBI cabal sought to overturn a duly elected president of the United States using opposition bogus BS research funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC, i.e. the Christopher Steele dossier, and then we can put Comey under oath, we can put Steele under oath, we can put everybody under oath right there in Congress. And let's fight it out in the arena of public opinion. Because in the end, Trump has truth on his side, he has justice on his side, and he has morality on his side. And if he does that, Buchanan Pat believes, and he's right, Trump will triumph, he will crush his enemies, but more than that, and that's why I was happy he had the courage to say what he said. If they try to overturn the results of the 2016 election, in other words, implement a coup, he is warning, and I think he's right on this, and I think many people in the media are being incredibly reckless by not heeding his warning, my warning, and others. A middle America is not going to take this line down. If there are legitimate crimes, that's one thing. But if you just want to remove him for the sake of removing him, then you are going to unleash civil chaos and social unrest. And this time, it's not going to be the hippies. It's not going to be Black Lives Matter. It's not going to be Antifa. It's not going to be these rabid students and welfare deadbeats. It's going to be middle America that's going to be on the streets. And then this country, I'm telling you, will have a real social and constitutional crisis on its hands. Now, to prove Pat's point, and it's been lost with the whole Iran nuclear deal in North Korea, this triumph of 3 Americans now coming home. And again, Trump's success in diplomacy. It's been lost, but it's a key point. Giuliani, who is now emerging as Trump's lead lawyer, has now offered to have Trump be interviewed by Robert Mueller. And in particular, listen to this. Here was the offer he gave to Mueller. You can ask President Trump any question you want on any topic you want. And I mean, literally hundreds of questions, thousands of questions. The only condition that we stipulate, do it in writing. Just do it in writing. And the reason why, as Giuliani said, is when you give somebody an oral interview, memory lapses, they can misphrase something, faulty memory, whatever it may be, that opens my client up to a perjury trap. Or to saying you gave us misleading statements, and that could get my client in legal jeopardy. Now, if you're Robert Mueller, and according to Rod Rosenstein, Trump is not a target of this investigation. That's what Rosenstein says. That's what Sessions says. Rosenstein has been telling Sessions. So if Trump is not the target of this investigation, and if you're just interested in the honest pursuit of truth, and you've interviewed how many hundreds of witnesses, what's the problem? If you're in a fact-finding mission, what's the problem? He's under oath. Everything is just written down. Robert Mueller said, "Niet. Niet. Go fly a kite." He dismissed it out of hand, almost as if it was an insult. So what does that show to me? Conclusively now, beyond the shadow of a doubt, Mueller wants to get him behind a closed door. And he wants to nail Trump on a process crime. He's setting up a perjury trap. And this is exactly what out-of-control prosecutors do. When they can't nail their target for the crimes they're allegedly, trying to convict him on, they then try to get him on some kind of a perjury trap. And that's what this is. And there is no way in hell that Giuliani should allow Trump to sit down in an interview with Mueller and his paid assassins. And shockingly, after this was now dismissed out of hand by Mueller, Giuliani is now coming back, says, okay, maybe we will do a sit-down face-to-face interview, but can you take some questions or topics off the table? Can we make it 2 to 3 hours? Can we limit the scope of the questioning and the time? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because going in, here is essentially what the problem Trump faces. Mueller knows the answer to every question that he's asking. Trump knows none of the answers. He has to, it's like a test. The teacher knows the answers ahead of time. For you to skate, for you to pass, you have to get 100%. One mistake, one mishap, and you know how Trump is, his propensity to exaggerate a little bit. He's a bit bombastic. He's not very precise with his words sometimes. He's a bit impulsive. He's got a bit of a temper. You start pumping him with questions, you could get him under his skin, rile him up. All he's got to do is make one mistake. Boom. Mueller will say perjury or obstruction of justice or misleading statements to the FBI. That's a crime. You should be impeached. Pat Buchanan is 1,000% right on this issue. What Trump should now say is blank off, subpoena me, go to the courts, go to Supreme Court, cry all you want. You don't like me, impeach me, and let's fight it out in Congress. Agree, disagree. Peter in Boston, you're up next. Go ahead, Peter.
Hey, Mr. Cooner. Good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Peter, I'm good. How are you, my friend?
Very well, sir. Glad to hear your voice. Glad to hear your opinions. You're spot on everything, and I do appreciate that, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Getting back to President Trump, who I'm behind 110% with this Iran deal. Mr. Buchanan made a couple valid points. We're not going to get the money back, and we're not going to be able to sell those Airbuses. But other than that, I don't believe Donald Trump, non-warmonger, is really going to get into a war with Iran when you have Benny Netanyahu and the Saudis right on his border. I'm hoping that President Trump will sit back just like Russia will and China will and let the Saudis and Netanyahu deal with them and say, we support you 110% from afar. I don't believe we're going to have to put boots on the ground and battle a massive army with massive weaponry that they've achieved through blunders of the previous administration. And I do believe President Trump has a good brain set on that.
Peter, I agree with you. I agree with you, and thank you for that call. Look, I thought, to be fair, I have a lot of respect for Pat. I've been reading his columns for 30 years. Frankly, we're friends. He has quoted my work, my columns in some of his books. So I just want that as a full disclosure. But I think that was the Achilles heel in his argument. I'll be candid with you. He makes a leap that I don't think he convinced me anyway, that pulling out of the deal triggers a war. For a couple of reasons. Number one, Trump will not get us into a war with Iran. I don't believe he will. He knows it will consume and destroy his presidency. The other point is, there's already a shadow war going on. I don't think Buchanan handled that question well, to be fair, to be honest. There's already, look, yesterday, we pulled out of the deal. Israel launched massive missile strikes against Iranian bases. Boom. 10 Iranians dead. God knows how many missiles and weapons depots they destroyed in Syria. And Iran is now vowing to shoot these missiles out of the sky in Syria. So you already have a proxy war. You already have a shadow war. So if he's worried about this thing getting hotter in Syria, Trump's not going in. He hasn't gone in so far. So to me, I think he's making a leap. In the end, a bad deal is a bad deal is a bad deal. And I don't think it could have been salvaged. Now, I think Trump, honestly, can renegotiate. I think if there's one guy who can put so much pressure on the mullahs and then come in and say, okay, you want no nuclear weapons? We have to guarantee no nuclear weapons. No. No ballistic missiles. No. The terrorism, that's got to stop. If anybody could make the Iranians come to an agreement at the table, it's Trump. And I think, honestly, that's his ultimate play. I think he wants to fix it and renegotiate it. And I think that's why he pulled out. I could be wrong. I'm just giving you my opinion. Rich in Waltham. Go ahead, Rich.
Listen, I'm still here, Jeff. Man, this is, all this talk of pulling out. Are we still talking about Iran or Stormy Daniels?
Whatever you want, Rich. Whatever you want. We can talk impeachment, Mueller, Giuliani, or Iran. Whatever you prefer.
Yeah, that was just a little funny. I don't know if you caught that. I went over your head. But, yeah, I liked a lot of what Pat Buchanan said, but I disagree with him on pulling out of a deal. I think Trump's doing the right thing. I really believe he has the American people's interests at heart. And, I think he makes these big, bold moves, and he's not doing it to, appease anybody, and he doesn't care about the political fallout. And that's one of the things I love about him. And, didn't ex-President Obama read the ex-president etiquette, where you're supposed to, go off and write your book and, go get your $500,000 speaking engagements at colleges and stuff and not supposed to be heard from? And John Kerry should jump back on his yacht and go back to Nantucket and shut his mouth. I really believe these people are getting payoffs, and that's why they're coming out of the woodwork. I mean, why else? I can't think of any other reason why they would. And it's just unbelievable. And anyone that can't see that the liberal Democrats are a fraud just aren't paying attention.
Amen. Amen. Look, Kerry's a Benedict Arnold. Obama's a Benedict Arnold. And you know what I find most disgusting? Bush afforded him every courtesy and never spoke out against his administration, even though he rolled back everything George W. Bush did. Yet he won't accord Trump the same respect and courtesy that Bush accorded him. That's the kind of lowlife Obama is. 156 here on the great WRKO. Okay, so here are the poll results. The Kelly Financial Services poll question of the day. On the Iran nuclear deal, who do you agree with? President Trump, Trump A, or Pat Buchanan B? Brittany, I hear it's a rout.
93% agree with Donald Trump and 7% agree with Pat Buchanan.
Wow. So, I mean, I think he lost this one pretty good.
I guess so.
Poor
guy.
Tom in New Hampshire, you're up next. Go ahead, Tom.
Good afternoon, Jeff.
Hi, Tom.
Yeah, I want to say something about this Iran thing.
Yes.
Even though I told Jared something else. What I want to weigh in about is, what do we know about any of these side deals that were done? That's never been made public. What was Obama? By the way, Obama has never been Benedict Arnold. He was never on our side anyway in the first place.
That's a good point.
In this Iran deal, I disagree with Pat Buchanan because we don't know enough about these rogue regimes like the mullahs. Okay? Have they ever been able to be trusted, just like North Korea? I think we should approach this the same way that we approach in North Korea. Not to trust. We need to verify what, and the fact that what's that organization that goes in and verifies?
The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA.
Yeah, that's the big sticking point, that we can't go in there, and why should we trust anything that they say? So that's my point.
Tom, look, I agree with you. I don't trust the mullahs. They hate us. They've been killing our soldiers. They've been kidnapping our people. They humiliated our sailors. I think it's obvious they despise us. Look at them today. In their own parliament, all the lawmakers were shouting death to America. I mean, to me, that's all you need to know. So I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. I never would have given him $100 billion, and I certainly would have given him I never would have given him $2 billion in cash. To me, that's criminal. That's what drug lords and drug cartels do. Russ in Boston, you're up next. Go ahead, Russ.
Jeff, I'm with the 93% that I disagree with Pat Buchanan. One of the things he mentioned was the fact that, China will take advantage of this if we end up with a war with Iran. Well, first of all, China is our number one competitor in the world economically. Regardless of what we do in the Middle East, they're still going to be our number one competitor. Now, Jeff, I want to ask you a question because I haven't heard yet. What is Chuck Schumer saying about Trump canceling the deal? Because he pulled the weasel play. He remained silent for a long time, and then toward the end, when the train was too far down the road, he went ahead and he was against it. So is he remaining silent now?
No. He says Trump made a mistake. He's against it. I mean, just to show you what a phony Chuck Schumer is. So he opposed it because his constituents wanted him to oppose it. Now he says Trump shouldn't have done it. Unbelievable.
The voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 100.7 WZLX HD2 Boston, an iHeart radio station.